question yesterday, which was
Are you well?
I'm better. I have a bruised rib.
Bruised rib.
ouch.
Do you box? You fell?
No, I think it's from coffee.
Coughing?
I think so.
Jeez.
Or my mom's dog.
Well, you're okay now. Yeah. How's your mom? Has she washed her car yet?
No, we actually almost went. It was like the last day. I'm going to visit her again this month. I don't want her to go without me.
To the car wash?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great experience.
I'm excited.
Okay, I'm sorry, Josh, go ahead.
My question yesterday was, is it ethical to try and teach your children the value of pain? And I guess to contextualize it is my son is very avoidant of things that create struggle for him. He wants, as children do, he wants the easy route. And anything that doesn't come, he's smart, and anything that doesn't come quickly to him, he's like, I'm not interested. I recall myself being that way somewhat when I was young, but my memory is not as severe as him. And my father taught us we should move towards pain, that life is painful, and life is full of struggle, and just deal with it. And I resented him a lot when I was young, and now I look back and appreciate those lessons. So that was the context of my question.
Okay.
Creating strife between me and my son.
Well, that's one thing we can talk about. Pain, parenting. Okay. Guarded pain versus just accidental. Okay. Anyone else?
On the capacity to resist philosophical suicide.
Okay. Okay, good. Anything?
How do you know when you're happy? 3, 2, 1.
Jesus Christ, you guys. Okay. How do you know when you're happy? Pain, philosophical suicide, and how do you know you're happy? I don't know. Recently, when I walk into my classes, I just keep thinking about retirement. Even though I don't really like the idea, but for some strange reason, it just pushes itself forward. Well, I suppose we could talk about all three of them. Eugene, anything? I'm sorry?
How do I write a brief or in-depth summary?
Of what?
Or videos, lectures? Or any tips?
A woman comes home from having gone to the store and finds her husband being a grouch, sitting on the sofa and giving very, very short answers to her questions. She wants closeness, emotional intimacy, but the guy isn't there. She takes a shower, she puts her lingerie on, she comes out. The man is tempted, they walk into the bedroom, he is happy. And all the emotions and all the things he felt go out the window. Now she can actually sit and have a conversation with him. And I use that example not to be crude, but for you to be wise enough to know the circumstances in which you are. If you're taking this class and you need this class to graduate, just impress me. It's okay if you're wrong. It's okay if you're, plagiarizing the whole thing. Just impress me, get the grade, and go your way. Because that is what I want. If you want to be authentic, creative, if I don't enjoy your authenticity, your honesty, chances are you're going to fail this class. And the point is, know the circumstances, know the people you're working with, do what they enjoy, please them, get what you want, and then go your way. Unless you happen to be like him. You're an old man or an old woman. You have nothing to lose. You take classes not because you need the units, not because you need to up your salary. You just want to go on there, hang out, talk to people, meet people. And so when someone says, well, what do you think about my class? And you just say, it's really awful. And
I really like it.
I know. but the point is, as long as you have power over other people, you can be honest. Not cruel, but honest. But if you don't have power over others, it's best to just play their game and then go your way. So if, for example, you're talking about the essay where it says brief but in-depth, which is an oxymoron, it doesn't work that way. How could you be like in-depth and yet brief?
About love.
Yeah, something like that. It doesn't make any sense. Only, foolish instructors would say such things. And foolish, students would actually follow that particular way. You can't be in-depth and brief. It doesn't work.
I'll just give you one answer.
Yeah, it's just a mirage I create for my students. Nobody reads, nobody listens, nobody talks, nobody thinks. So, good luck. You'll be fine. Anything else, Max?
Yeah, maybe being cynical towards the workings of the world, but remaining optimistic about your own place and your own life.
You could have cynicism based on emotions, a history that is not well processed. It's like you've been married 10 times. You've never understood your own self in the midst of marriage. You've never really taken time to understand your companion or your life or the complexities of a relationship. But, you're lonely, you're sad, you're depressed, you go out, you happen to be a good-looking man with lots of money in your pocket. You can easily find dates, you build a relationship, 2-3 years later, it falls apart. And because you have power, to some extent, that power intoxicates you. And that intoxication kind of blocks you from thinking soberly about things. So you just kind of just go from one relation to another. And then you get to be 50 or 60 or 70, you say, everything just sucks. But you never taken a chance. Never taken a step to process anything. There is another way of being cynical, which is you understand things. And that takes a long, long, long time. Consider for a moment the things that are going on between Israel and Palestine. Why do people go to therapy? People go to therapy because they have a past. People go to therapy because that past has not been processed. And so they keep repeating the same mistakes, and they assume that just because they now find themselves in a brand new relationship, somehow the past has been deleted. So if you want to understand the conflict between, these two states, if you want to consider them as states, then you have to look at their history. And then whatever the history is creates the present. And whatever the history is that has created the present projects itself into the future. And then you say, okay, well, you have, and it's not just Israel and Palestine. It's the French, it's the English, it's America, it's the lobbyists, it's the military complex, it's human nature, it's greed, it's lust, it's innocence, it's vengeance, it's resentment. And you say, how the hell am I going to talk about any of that stuff? How can one even spend a semester talking about the conflict that takes place in the Middle East? And after a while, because you understand things relatively well, and in understanding, you also come to realize how complicated things are. You know, you kind of just throw your hands up and you say, you know what? I don't know. I don't even want to talk about it. Unless, of course, you happen to be living in Palestine or Israel, where bombs are dropping, your kid brother is dead. Now you're on autopilot. You don't care much about the history. All you know is that your brother was 20. He had no hand to play in the formation of Israel. You're not a Zionist. You're not part of the Hamas movement. All you know is that your brother is dead, and now you want revenge. You know, you put reflection, you put observation on the side and say, I want to go find the people who, did this thing. If you're on autopilot, you don't need to know anything. You're just kind of governed by emotions and you move forward. If on the other hand, and then, you may kind of figure out who had killed your brother, for example. Your vengeance is by destroying them equally. And then you come home and you realize you're still not satisfied. Justice has not yet been served, and you don't know why, So upon, deep reflection, cynicism is the only path that will be offered to you. In the absence of reflection, you can be optimistic about a whole host of things, Diogenes was a founder of the Cynic school, and he was considered to be the Socrates having gone extremely mad. Socrates was somewhat insane, but Diogenes was insane tenfold, He lived in a hut, not in a hut, in a tub. Even when Alexander the Great went to visit him, he looked at this emperor who had, he owned the entire world, and said to him, just, can you leave, move yourself because you're blocking the sun. Temperamentally, he was a little introverted, and so that makes introverts have a tendency of just not figuring out who the hell they are, what they're looking for, and every time they're satisfied, misery sets in. So to some extent, Diogenes was that. The other aspect of Diogenes was that he understood things really, really well, which made him completely hopeless about things, And that's not a bad place to be, The other problem with cynicism is that you don't really put much value into anything. And so you kind of move through them carelessly. Not careless as in you don't pay attention to them. You don't care for them as much because you understand, My own kids are very much like his. They don't listen. They break everything. And then I look back at my own life, and I was the same way. The only reason my parents shipped me to India was because I was a horrible student, and they had no idea what to do with me. And it took about 25, 30 years for me to figure some things out, and that was with the help of a teacher I had, And I say to myself, if the people closest to you, your parents, can't really assist you in figuring out the complexities of life, there isn't much I can do. I can, give them advice, but advice kind of appeals to your intellect. The way you move through life are through your emotions. Emotions and intellect are two completely different worlds. Unless you have respect for someone, unless you fear them, unless you want to please them, then their advice is not only intellectual, but it also taps into your emotional world. And then you pay attention, you do as they say. But you and I are far too close to our kids for them to respect us in a way that is educative. I go back to one of my friends in France. For the past 40 years, His story is a little different now because he's almost 70, but his dating game was that he looks at the person and he says, I like you, I'm attracted to you, let's go out, let's hang out, but you need to know that you're going to be expired in 2 years. That's my max. I can't hang out with anyone more than 2 years. Now that's a very cynical way of looking at things, but he also is completely aware of his own capacity, and that he knows that beyond 2 years he just can't do it, he can't compromise. He was a political prisoner back home, and he's tasted politics, he's tasted pain, he's tasted the betrayals of life, and he also tasted how flimsy life is and how unpredictable it is. And he doesn't want to waste his time compromising with something that's not worth compromising. And so the moment you walk into a relationship, the past comes in. Remember, Mas'ud, you can only do 2 years. And your companion doesn't really know what to do with your cynicism, with the fact that you don't find any hope in the longevity of this particular relationship. And so they can either hang out with you or they can walk away. And they can't walk away because after 2 weeks they're just attracted to you. So if you have this understanding that leads into cynicism, you just walk through life cautiously, carelessly, kind of freely. And you trample on people because you don't really need them. And the moment you understand something really, really well, you also become very independent. And that's a dangerous place to be independent, because you don't need other people. And when you don't need other people, you don't care for their opinions, you don't care to please them. And that gives you a tremendous amount of power over them. Now, if you happen to be an idiot, there's a chance that you're going to just bully them around like Gilgamesh. If, on the other hand, you are aware of your past, mindful of your past, that you were once weak, and over time you accumulated power, whether it's physical or intellectual or emotional or spiritual. But because you're aware of your past, that past keeps you from becoming a bully. You have a great amount of power, but you use that power in a way that benefits you and to some extent other people. But cynicism is a great place to be. Some people temperamentally, they can never be a cynic. Never, ever, 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 ever. They see bad things, but they say, oh, there is hope. It's like a... Anyways, yeah. So, yeah.
Do you think it's possible to exist between both types of cynicism? Where it's somewhat based on your emotional past and just kind of a negative view of the world because life is beat you up, and so you kind of give it up on it. And also to have experiences such that you understand things in a way that, or is it one or the other?
Let me just, if I may. No, it's not about that. Can I tell you a story? Because I think there needs to be some sort of an introduction to everything that I've said so far, and just the way I talk about things. When I first began teaching, I was a storyteller. Everyone who asked me a question for about 20 years or so, about 15 years or so, I would always just come up with a story. And then I would never explain the stories. I would just leave it to the students to go home, if they were interested, to kind of figure out what the story means. My classes were diverse in the sense that anyone could talk for as long as they wanted. I would just sit back and just facilitate, I had some colleagues, and they began to do things behind my back about me to other people. On the encouragement of one of my colleagues, I left Laney for a different school, only to realize that she liked me in theory, that she likes the way I teach, she likes the way I am, she likes the way I talk, but my approach to things is something that would create some difficulties for her because she wanted to be a dean and a chancellor and I would be in her way. So I was forced to resign. Then when I come back, I had a different set of experiences. And then as you kind of get beat up by life a little, you want to understand things. And when you begin to understand things, human nature becomes questionable, compassion becomes questionable, generosity becomes questionable. That as you age, your sense of urgency increases. So your storytelling ways begin to change a little. You tell stories now, but you unpack them fully. Now, one thing that you need to, I think, for those of you who are interested to understand is this is what I have done for the past 30 years. You know, I like ideas. I like to kind of figure out what lives inside these ideas. I didn't get married and then become interested in these ideas. I became interested in these ideas, then I got married, making sure that my wife enjoys these ideas. And so when we talk about whatever it is that we talk about, I get to my office at 5 and I write. And I wrote in hopes of understanding, discovering some of the blind spots that lived inside me. So when I come to class, I can kind of be about things a bit more clearly. Now, if your life is not situated as such, where you're busy and you have to kind of be like a machine at your work, and then you got to take your kid here and then take your kid there, and then you got to do a lot of honeydews, honeydew this and honeydew that, then what happens is you come to class and there's a different part of you that comes to life, a part of you that desires to reflect, desires to think and feel and make sure those feelings pass through the filtration of your intellect. But it's only for an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe. And maybe once in a while you get a chance to talk to a buddy of yours about the things we talk about. But this is not your profession. And so what happens is, this is the reality of your life, which is 15 hours, the grind of life, and you have about an hour and a half, 2 leisurely hours where you can actually sit and talk about and think about things and feel about things the right way, perhaps. But the 2 hours, they're not going to stand a chance in the midst of a 15-hour. And then what you have is, as the 2 hours become more like 3 hours and then 4 hours, well, you spend less time in this other world of yours, and now conflicts begin to appear. And then you come to class and say, well, is there a way to resolve conflict? Yes, drop the class. Unless your wife has the patience of Job to wait and wait and wait for 10, 15, 20 years until you begin to understand things the right way. But by the time you get there, she may find interest elsewhere. Your child will probably no longer talk to you. And this is not a price you want to pay, you know. Yeah.
What about balance?
There is no balance. To become good at anything, to become good at anything, to become a good pianist. I'm not talking about like cheap stuff. I'm a barista. Fine. To become good at anything, it means what? It means, well, if you want to learn how to play the piano, an hour a day is not going to do it. Okay? And so what happens, the more you invest yourself in wanting to play the piano, well, the more you have to sacrifice other things. Okay? And what you have then after 15, 20 years is you're a great pianist, but you don't really have very many friends. You're a great pianist. Your parents only love you when you play the piano. Okay? The point is, to become good at anything, you need to be an extremist. But to be an extremist, you have to have a cause, and you need to love the cause.
Yeah.
Okay?
What I'm trying to find is, for myself at least, is balance. So for years I was a chef, and I would pour myself into that, and I worked 80 hours a week, and didn't see my family, and didn't go to birthday parties and vacations. Poured myself into that, and I was not happy because I didn't have balance. Now I have a job where I'm not so invested in it. I do a sales job, make good money, and I invest more of my time in my friends and my family, and I'm much happier.
Sure.
Is there a way to follow your passion and balance your life?
You can only find balance when you become proficient. And once you become proficient, you can walk away from the piano for a month. Once you go back, it's like you never left it. Balance can only be found when you have attained perfection or you become really good at a craft. Once you become really good, it's never going to leave you. And that's the trick. So first you have passion, you become an extremist because you have a love affair with playing the piano. and then you spend 10 hours playing the piano, you lose a whole host of things. There comes a point you realize, well, you still like the piano, but you also like to kind of venture other places. And sometimes you walk away from the piano for like 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, and you go back after 10 minutes of warming up, you're good as new. You know, so balance can only be found once you've achieved your goal, not before. If you don't have any passion, then you have once in a while you have glitches in your psyche, and that can be fixed, in no time. But the idea that you can't serve two masters, it's very true. I know you love your wife, and I also know you love piano. And sometimes your wife becomes an obstacle to your first passion, which is piano. Okay. Unless you have a wife who just appreciates, what an artist's temperament is, and what's the first love for any artist is their art, their craft. The wife or the spouse or the companion always comes second. When you become really good, you've gained popularity or fame, depending on how greedy and lustful you are. Then there comes a point your wife says, "Can we go on a cruise?" You say, "La, let's go away for like a year to Italy, stay there and come back." Really? Yeah. And it's because piano just lives inside you now. You can just create notes inside your head without even being next to like this wooden box. So yeah, you have to be an extremist if you want to be good. If you want to be mediocre, just the way we are is fine. Mediocrity is just the name of the human life. Okay, let's talk about happiness, parenting, and philosophical suicide. Any questions before we... Anything before we... Nothing? Good morning. I hope your companion doesn't like to jog, because she would leave you behind and find another man. I mean, in time, of course. Any questions? You play football. It's good. So many years ago, there was a guy whose name was Plato. Not the stuff you buy at Toys R Us or Target. An actual man who lived some 2,500 years ago, who had a teacher named Socrates, who himself had a teacher named Diotima. Plato came up with a story. It's an interesting story. Most often it's kind of just spoken or expressed very briefly, casually. We have about roughly 2 hours, so we can talk about it in some depth. It's called Allegory of the Cave. Some of you have heard of it. Some of you have read the story yourself. And it covers, I suppose, a lot of bases. Almost all the questions that we've encountered in this class for the past 30 years are embodied in that particular story. So there is this guy that is born in this cave. One of the things about cave is that it's dark, and you're born in it, which means that it's the only world that you know. And it's not really a physical cave, it's an intellectual, psychological, emotional cave. And consider the cave to be like 4 or 5 chains that all of us in this class have. And they wrap themselves around our bodies, our psyches, our intellects. It's something we talked about yesterday. There is a German philosopher named Martin Heidegger. He has this thing, this concept, it's called thrownness. That we are thrown into this world. Nobody asks our permission. It's something that Omar Khayyam had mentioned 500 or 600 or 700 years ago, that you come out of your mom, you're either a man or a woman. I'm not talking about 2023 where you can be all sorts of things. So let's just stick with traditional narratives. My apologies. So, and if you come out as a woman, there are certain things that your body will demand of you. And after a while, there are certain things that your psyche will demand of you. And you have really no choice about any of those things. You can come out as an introvert or an extrovert, and you have no control over any of that either. And you come out as white, as brown, as yellow, as black, as red, and you have no choice to correct any of that stuff. It just comes with you. And then you come into a society over which you have zero power. And that society will judge you for your skin color. That society will judge you for your gender. All of us are condemned. You don't choose your parents. You can come out of your mother's womb and your father's an alcoholic, and there's nothing you can do. And while you were in your mom, she could have been a drug addict, and there isn't much you can do about that either. You're not born in the 15th century, you're not born in the 16th century, you're not in an Amish community. You were born in Oakland in 2023. The moment you open your eyes, you're either living in a studio with 2 parents and 5 siblings, or you're born in a mansion. You're either in a place of privilege or a place of poverty. And wherever you are born, and remember, geography has its own set of, every culture has its own set of advertisements. If you live in Roseville, where my parents live and where I used to live for 30 years, and it happens to be a very, very, very religious environment to some extent, there are churches everywhere. Lots of people from Ukraine. There's a good chance that you're going to go to church every Saturday and every Sunday and every Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. Which means that if one asks you any questions, you're going to respond to those questions according to the advertisements that live inside your head, which is religion. If on the other hand, you have parents who care very little about religion and like music, like Beyonce and Kanye West and Miley Cyrus, well, that's where you're happy, that's where your identity lives. So we're all condemned. Okay. And that is the cave. And the cave, every cave has a wall. And on every cave wall, come and go shadows. You know, you leave your house and a nice looking man walks your way and you say, wow, I like this particular face. I like this shadow. You go home, you're driving home and you turn on the radio and there is Miley Cyrus singing. And it tantalizes your interior. And you realize what Plato perhaps may be suggesting about the cave is that It's something that holds all of us hostage. Our culture, our history, personal, cultural, the world of advertisement, our parents, our addictions to things, our parents' addictions to things, our temperaments, and none of us are free. Which means that we're going to, in our consciousness, or this container that lives inside us, it's going to be filled with biases, prejudices, judgments of all sorts, and we don't really understand them. But we have them nevertheless because they are our GPS to who we are and what we are and how we should live our lives and how other people should function. And just in case someone asks you a question that's going to rock the very foundation of your belief system, it's going to make you unhappy. It's going to make you doubt. It's going to create fear inside you. And you will do whatever you can to keep whatever has been given to you in this cave alive. It makes you happy. Imagine you came to this class having a boyfriend and you said, I asked you, do you have a boyfriend? Yes. Are you happy? Yes. How old are you? 18. How old is he? 18. Have you examined the function of relationships? Examine the function of sex. Examine the function of relationship in the 21st century. Are you done with school? Is he done with school? Do you know that a woman matures far, far, far too fast than a man? That if you're 18 as a woman and your boyfriend is 18, your man is behind by about 5 to 10 years. So you're actually going out with a guy who's only 10, you know. And though you may be happy now, just wait for a couple of months or a couple of years, misery will come your way because no 18-year-old is able to stand and understand the complexities of an intimate relationship. But should I ask, a series of questions in that particular nature, there's a good chance that you're going to feel bad. You're going to say, well, he's a bit intrusive. He's a little mean-spirited. Maybe I should go and complain to his dean. Okay? And one of the things you need to understand about this cave is that since every single one of us in this class live in our own private caves, there are shadows on this wall that we like. There are shadows on this wall that we have faith in. There are shadows on this wall that guide us, tell us who we are. They define happiness for us. They define what the meaning of life is for us. And we don't like people challenging them. We don't like people pushing us to a point where we begin to doubt the things in which we believe.